You are listening to Packers Talk Radio Network.
PackersTalk.com.
Eddie Lacy, Mike Daniels, Gilbert Brown, Don Barclay, Micah Hyde, your Green Bay Packers, yesterday's legends and today's superstars. From corporate or nonprofit events to private parties, add some spice, hire a Packers player from Mayfield Sports Marketing. For details, just go to PackersTalk.com and click on Player Appearances.
Are you looking for some signed Packer memorabilia?
Look no further than Waukesha Sports Card.
If the Green Bay Packer can sign it, Waukesha Sports Cards has it.
Check our website for upcoming Packer player and legend signings.
Go to WaukeshaSportsCards.com.
Welcome to Titletown Sound.
Babo? Who's Babo? Oh, Bobo! That's me. Present. I'm here. Sorry, my secretary didn't write that down right.
I don't think I'd know Spencer Havener if I tripped over it.
You're the worst. You're the worst ever.
Jeremy, you love my sense of humor, right?
Yeah, it's my favorite ever.
I think Jermichael Finley could be back next year, Jeremy.
Do you?
I also think Omarius Hines could be back next year.
I hate you so much. I hate you.
We chuck it down the field, we run fast, and we score touchdowns. I have nothing more to add. That's it.
Welcome once again to Titletown Sound. This is the first Jeff Janis edition of the show. Every episode of the show from now on is going to be a Jeff Janis edition of the show. On today's show, we will talk about where Jeff Janis grew up. We'll learn what Jeff Janis's favorite breakfast is.
Stop.
And we'll also address the rumor that the JJ in JJ Watt stands for Jeff Janis. But first, let's talk about the game that was the Packers and the Chargers locking horns. We could call it the breakout game for Jeff Janis if we so choose. But Jeremy, I'll let you decide that. But first, we should focus on the defensive side of the ball. Phillip Rivers, Chargers quarterback, still got it. Threw for over 500 passing yards as opposed to throwing for over 500 rushing yards, I guess. That's possible. So, Jeremy, your thoughts on the Packer defense giving up all those yards through the air?
Well, the Packers have been fantastic this year on defense until this game against the Chargers. The one game of the season where they did not have B.J. Raji. A lot of their blitzes have been successful this year because of B.J. Raji. He's been demanding a double team in the middle, and it's made for a lot of fun defense to watch. Without B.J. Raji, that defense is going to have a harder time getting to the quarterback. Phillip Rivers was cool under pressure, and for the most part, he had a nice, clean pocket. So he was just picking the defense apart, and I don't think that means that the defensive backs aren't any good or anything like that. You got to remember, Phillip Rivers is a high-quality quarterback, regardless of if you like him and his attitude or whatever. Phillip Rivers is pretty darn good. And if he's got time to stand there, he's going to find somebody that's open. It's going to happen. So the Packers they struggled to actually get solid pressure all game long. And Rivers had a day, and they had nothing to lose. He just was trying to will his team to a win. It fell apart. It didn't happen. But in the end, the only important number is 20. The Packers only gave up 20 points. I was thinking about that last set of plays on the goal line at the end of the game. There were two plays where Phillip Rivers could have scored. One where he missed, I think it was Danny Woodhead in the flat, or Woodhead got open and he missed Woodhead. Could have been over the middle. I don't know. It's kind of muddled. But there was also a play where Phillip Rivers had a wide open field right in front of him, and he decided to throw the ball. You could almost count that as a touchdown against the defense because they should have been. But they weren't. They only gave up 20 points. And I'm happy with that.
You know, you say that Rivers picked him apart and had a day, and that he had a clean pocket, but how do you know? He got the ball out like a second and a half every time. And that was the game plan, to avoid the pressure by just getting rid of the ball as fast as they could. I don't think the defense really had that bad of a game. I know that's going to sound silly when they give up 500 passing yards, but I felt like corners were right there. He made some great throws. That Antonio Gates catch was silly. I don't think it was that terrible of a game. Again, I know that statistically that sounds ridiculous to say, but the game plan was a good one to get the ball.
And Chris is
down
gone.
the field.
There you are. We lost you for a second. You disappeared.
Right.
Now you're back.
So the
We lost him again. All right. Well, Chris is being robot Chris at the moment, but we'll get that figured out. Chris, I have to agree. Actually, I know it sounds silly because of statistics. With the numbers, they're really big, but it's a bend don't break defense, and I'll say that till I'm blue in the face. Guess what? It's a bend don't break defense, and they're not breaking. They haven't been all season long. There's not a lot to really complain about with this team. People just want to find something to complain about because that gives them something to talk about.
And I understand it's a little bit. It would concern you when you give up 500 passing yards. That I understand that, but like you said, 20 is the important number. And I think overall, it's not like they were just getting beat down the field. They were getting picked apart by Philip Rivers, who had a great game, and he did. He played very well, and they had to adjust their offense to the Packers' defense and their strengths. When was the last time a team had to do that? So they had to get the ball out quickly because they knew the pressure would be there if they didn't. When was the last time a team had to adjust their game plan because of our defense?
Well, that's a good question. I don't remember.
I think it was probably 2010.
Long time ago. So even though 2010 is not that long ago, it feels like it. But I think he had a clean pocket. I saw a lot of plays where the pass rush was just not there. Especially Clay Matthews coming up the middle. When he was playing inside linebacker, he'd come inside. Without Raji taking a double team, it's harder for Clay Matthews to get through there.
I agree with you. I think Raji's a big part of this defense, and I think that he makes a big difference. But I do think they also had the right game plan. And it helped to have a Raji-less Packers out there that the game plan would work even better.
Yeah. I mean, because Raji's been so good off the ball, he's been really quick off the ball, and then he's gotten a really good push into the backfield numerous times this season, and that's really tough to deal with. When you're a quarterback and you're trying to drop back, and you got your center and his keisters being pushed into your face, that's awfully hard. And Raji's been really good this year, so it's tough to not have him. I understand that 500 yards is scary. I'm not concerned. I feel like this is the outlier. I think the rest of the season we're going to see successful defense. I think they did their job. They got the job done. They did what they needed to win, and that's what you ask for from teams that you want to contend to win Super Bowls. They've got to win those gritty games where it's not all going well, and they still figure out how to win.
Now, let me pose this to you guys, because I kind of agree. I would have liked to have seen a little more pressure. I feel like Guyon could have had a better game, and I've been as big a Guyon supporter as anybody, so I wanted to see a little more. Let me pose this question to you guys. If B.J. Raji obviously didn't play, and he's got a bye week to get healed up, if the team basically decided that Raji getting one more week off would be a really, really good idea. Like, he could still go out and be 85, maybe 90% of what he has been this season. Would you rather have that 85 to 90% B.J. Raji against Denver, or would you say, you know what, he's so important, it's one game, let's give him an extra week just to get him back to 100%? Chris, I'll pose that to you. Would you rather get Raji back out there right away, or
if he can be in any way effective, I want him on the field against Denver. I think Peyton Manning, he's so immobile. He's a nice sitting duck. I think Raji can really disrupt things, and I want him there. And I don't think it's not like a big groin tear. It's not like it's something that's going to get worse, or at least you hope not. So I want him to play, and I think he can make a big difference, and it can be a big factor in the game.
Selfishly, as a fan, I want him to play. I want him to play because, like you said, Peyton Manning is a sitting duck, and when the pass rush is coming around the edge and up the middle, it's scary. It's scary for a guy that gets on the field with a walker every game, and he's scared to get hit because he's old. He crumples under pressure. Peyton Manning is not the old Peyton Manning. Well, he is old Peyton Manning, but he's not the past Peyton Manning. So he doesn't take pressure very well, and if Raji's playing, it's better for fans for sure, but it's better for this defense. But if you told me that Raji might miss important snaps towards the end of the season, I'd let him sit for another week. Because I think that he's that important later in the season. He's that important in the playoffs that if it's going to be a problem later, I'd rather see him sit. If the Packers deem that he's ready and it's not going to be a problem later, then go for it. You got to go for it. It only makes sense to sit him if the doctors look at him and say this could be an issue if he pushes too hard.
All right. Speaking of injuries, on the offensive side of the ball, let's talk a little about Eddie Lacy. We'll get to Twitter questions later, but our buddy Jay was asking about Fat Eddie, as he calls him. P-H-A-T, Fat Eddie, just for anybody listening in that didn't see that tweet. So, Chris, I'll throw it to you first. Your thoughts on Eddie Lacy's situation right now and what Lacy's going to be going forward.
So the one thing that I thought was intriguing this week was not that Lacy didn't have a great game or that Starks got more carries. That's happened in the past, or Eddie Lacy has started slow. I was really surprised that Starks got the start at the beginning of the game. I mean, obviously the start's at the beginning of the game, but that he got the start, that he was on the field, that's like, I don't know. Does it mean anything? Mike McCarthy's pretty deliberate with things like that, so maybe it does. I don't know. Maybe it means Lacy's more injured than we thought. Maybe it means they're not happy with his performance or something, but I thought that was really, I don't know, I thought it said something. Like, look, this is the first week I've ever seen the Fat Eddie Lacy with an F, not a PH, and really wondered if his conditioning was an issue. Because, I don't know, I just feel like the coaching staff, by starting Starks and then playing Lacy later, may have been saying something. I don't know.
I think it was stupid to play him at all. I think his ankle is an issue, and I've said this before. When you're that big, and he's big, you need both your ankles. The kid can't cut. He just can't. He doesn't have the ability right now, and he needs to. He's got the vision for it. It's something we've seen over and over. He finds the open hole and cuts to it.
I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I may have sat him this week, but why would you start Starks? Do you think there's a reason behind it?
Well, I'll answer your question with a question because the presidential election's coming up, so I figured we'll go all politician here. My question to you is, why even suit Lacy up if you were going to start James Starks? If Eddie Lacy is in a place where you can't start him...
So that's my point, and I agree with you. That's my point. So you don't suit Eddie Lacy up if you can't start him, but you do suit him up if you could start him, but you choose to start Starks over him. Doesn't that say something? I
think it's I think it's something else. I don't think it's that, hey, we're mad at Lacy, we're going to start Starks. I think it's more like Lacy's not playing all that well lately. We're going to suit him up because we want him just in case, but we're going to start with Starks and see how that goes. I think they should have left Lacy on the bench. They should have let him rest for another week. He would have gotten 3 weeks of rest, and that would have been better for his ankle than just trotting him out there 4 times and trying to run the football with him. Give him the rest, let his ankle heal, because he needs it. He needs his big, fat body to be on top of 2 stable ankles, and he doesn't have that right now. So the whole Eddie Lacy thing, I don't think it's conditioning. I don't think that's their problem. I don't think they're concerned about it. I think their biggest problem with him right now is the fact that he needs to heal, and they're still suiting him up on game day when they're not even going to use him anyways. They put him out there on 4 plays. He looks ridiculous. Now everybody's talking about Eddie Lacy and how fat and unconditioned he is. But I'll tell you what, those first few weeks before the ankle injury, he looked pretty damn good, and I was pretty happy with Eddie Lacy.
I don't know. It's the bye week. I need a conspiracy theory, so I'm clinging to. They're for some reason very angry at Eddie Lacy.
I feel you. I love a good conspiracy theory. Maybe they are. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they are angry at Lacy.
I don't know. It just seems like it's kind of a message to start Starks. I don't know. And I keep saying I don't know because, well, I don't know. But I don't know. I feel like they're very deliberate with moves like that. And maybe I'm just reading way too much into it because I'm bored and there's no Packers football on Sunday.
I mean, that's a possibility.
Very good possibility.
Bob McGinn did say that people are saying Lacy's up to like 260.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's heavy. That's big. So maybe, if he's up to 260, maybe you're not wrong. Maybe they're upset with the fact that he's so unhealthy. He didn't work out in the offseason. He wasn't unclear about that, and he wasn't embarrassed about it either. He didn't put a lot of effort into his offseason. He came in fat. That happened. But
Yes,
he looked,
right?
but he looked
Yeah.
good in those first few weeks. He looked good in the
Oh.
first few weeks. So I think, I think it's just a matter of he needs to get healthy, and they were trying to give him some rest, but they also wanted to feel like, we're safe. We got Starks to start, and then we got Lacey if we need him. But I think that was stupid. I think they should have put him on the bench, started Starks, and just went with it.
Or maybe put him on a treadmill.
Or a treadmill. Or a hover round. Whatever.
I still think, to me, the simplest answer is probably the correct one. Eddie Lacy was probably in the can when the game started, and that's why they put Starks out there.
That is
Just throwing it out there.
that is a theory, or he was at a concession stand.
There you go. Also a good theory.
Getting a hot dog. That's what was happening.
Speaking of people hot dogging, Aaron Rodgers, not generally somebody to hot dog, and not somebody who's had much reason to lately. He hasn't quite looked as great as he did at, week one when he was just the greatest thing in the history of the world. So, Chris, your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers right now? Is he actually not playing that well, or is it more a matter of receivers not getting open? What are your thoughts?
I think he's still playing very well. I think, and I almost want to defer to Jeremy on this one because I think he wrote a nice piece about the wide receiver issue. I think that's where it all is, the lack of separation from the wide.
Well, since Chris disappeared to Robot Chris again.
Quote unquote lack of a. I don't know that it's really the lack of a deep threat that's a big deal, although I think that plays a factor. But I think I want Jeremy. I want you to talk about this because I think the piece that you did about separation for the wide receivers is really kind of the main point here.
Okay, cool. I just want to say your point did come clear, so it's not like we lost you forever. We only lost you for a second. So I wrote a piece about the wide receivers, the fact that they're not getting open, but most of it is that they're banged up. And the fact that there's no deep threat. They're really in need of a deep threat, especially for a guy like Randall Cobb to play the game that he plays. Randall Cobb's yards per catch are down, and they're going to be down as long as the safeties aren't playing deep. And the safeties aren't going to play deep unless you can throw it over the top, and that's not happening right now. So there's just a balance right now they're trying to strike. They're going to figure it out. There are guys on this team that can get open deep. They just haven't figured out how, who, and when. So they're going to get there, and that'll fix that problem. But the truth is, on this whole thing, Aaron Rodgers has been okay. Let me say that better. Aaron Rodgers has been good. He's had moments where he holds the ball too long because he's looking deep when he's got guys open short. And he doesn't need to go deep, but he wants to. And that's frustrating to see. There have been times where he's taken a sack when there were guys open underneath. So it's not entirely that guys are not getting open. It's a mix of both. There is a big problem with health in the receiver core. That's the biggest issue. So you can just, put a stamp on that biggest issue. That's the problem. Unhealthy receivers. They need to get healthy. They need to figure out how to go deep. And Rodgers is looking for it. He really, really wants to go deep. It's just not happening right now. But at the same time, you can't really say anything negative about Rodgers. He's leading the league in touchdowns. He's ranked 6th in the league right now. How can you be upset about it? And it's not like I'm seeing a lot of Packer fans complaining about Aaron Rodgers. I just think we're so used to the big numbers and the freakish play that if it doesn't happen, it's like panic mode. What's wrong with Rodgers and what's wrong with the offense? The offense is winning football games. They're scoring touchdowns. They had a hard time against that defense this week, and they still found ways to get in the end zone. I think
you're right. The biggest factor really is injury, and think about what other team could have overcome the injuries they've had at wide receiver and actually score points. It just wouldn't happen. So obviously they're not scoring as well as they have in the past. But look at I think it was an ESPN.com article that came out today that they're the most injured team in the NFL yet this year, and I don't think that tells the whole story, but they've had a lot of injuries to their wide receiver core, and it's really it should have affected them as much as it has. They should not be performing as well.
I agree.
You don't just get rid of some of your top receivers and expect the offense is going to perform at least now as well as you thought it would, because it's going to take time for that offense to adjust and change. And the health is going to improve. I don't think any of the receivers are really healthy right now. When they come back from the bye, they should be in a lot better shape, and I think you're going to see a bit of a different offense. It's not going to blow the doors off of people, but it will be much improved. And I should say you'll see it at least maybe the week after the bye, because Denver's defense is a solid defense. They're going to have trouble with them.
Yeah, I agree. They are going to have a hard time. People were talking about, they need to scheme to get guys open, and I don't disagree with that. But, part of that is doing things like putting Randall Cobb in the backfield and trying to get him lined up with a linebacker and things like that. Well, right now they're not using Cobb in the backfield, I think, because of his injury. So they're not wanting to put him in any awkward positions that he could injure that any further. Ty Montgomery was that guy, and now he's injured his ankle. But there's another big problem here that I don't know if anybody's talked about. I mentioned it a little bit in the article, but I think we should go a little deeper into it. But the tight end play has sucked. It's not been what it needs to be. And I don't know if it's because Richard Rodgers has been the only healthy tight end on the team for weeks, and he's played a lot of snaps, but he's not been great. He has not been great, and he has not jumped forward the way that I was expecting him to. And I'm really actually disappointed in the play of Richard Rodgers, and I'm sure he could use somebody to rotate in with him, and that might be the issue. But I expected a big jump from Richard Rodgers this year, and I'm just not seeing it. He's had moments where he's done some things. He's had catches and touchdowns, and that's all great. But I think they could use a little bit more out of Richard Rodgers. He's not a fast guy. That's nobody's saying he's fast, but he better figure out how to get open and start making some plays. I felt like Richard Rodgers would be a huge piece of this offense at this point in the season already. And right now, I think he's a secondary thought. It's not something that's standing out at all. And I'm disappointed. And I think they could really use some top-notch tight end play to really improve this offense. And they just don't have it right now.
On that note, I fear I kind of buried the lead here. But Jeff Janis, obviously the heart and soul of this football team. And finally getting some time on offense and beginning to show us just how good he can be, quieting the doubters, if you will. And it's about doggone time. So, Chris, I'll pose this to you. On a more serious note here, obviously Jeff Janis finally getting a little attention on offense. Do you think Jeff Janis could be an answer for the problems that the Packers have in the passing game right now? As far as just the deep threat, as far as getting open, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Short answer, no. Jeff Janis was pressed into service this week essentially because they ran out of healthy wide receivers. I just don't think he is, aside from the speed and the quote-unquote raw talent, I just don't think they trust him, and I think he's given many reasons not to be trusted. He had a couple flashy plays on Sunday. It's just not enough. To develop Jeff Janis is going to take even longer. I just don't think they really believe in him, and I don't think he's shown anything to tell you that beyond those two plays, he can really be a contributor. I know he is, the great white hope, but from what I've seen, I think that he's lucky that he's been a fairly effective special teams player because, other than some special teams gaffes, he has been an effective player, and I think that's what has him, a solid roster spot on this team. His wide receiver play has been lacking.
Chris, I reject your answer. Jeremy, go ahead.
I like that. Well, I should prepare for rejection then. I'm not sold on Jeff Janis as a possible weapon in this offense. I'm not sold on Jeff Janis as a possible weapon in this offense anytime soon. I think it's going to be maybe next year. And I think it just comes down to a matter of the game speed is vastly different from Saginaw Valley State. The playbook is vastly bigger. It's a tougher game in the NFL. He needs to put in a ton of work to get to where he needs to be. And up until last week, he's not been a guy that's really done anything. And when you look at those two plays that he had, well, the first one, he ran a fly route. So Rodgers says, go long. And he did. Well, there's no fly route in the route tree that turns left. And I know that he said Rodgers started to roll out of the pocket, so he went over that direction. Okay, that is what he's supposed to do. If that's the scenario, that's what he's supposed to do. That ball was clearly intended for Richard Rodgers. There's no play in the playbook where two wide receivers end up 30 yards downfield next to each other. That's not a thing, okay? So Jeff Janis was out of position. Either he played that completely right because Rodgers rolled out of the pocket, or he got lucky as hell. which I'm leaning on lucky as hell. So he was out of position, which is consistently the story with Jeff Janis. And then on the play where Rodgers just pitched him the ball, great play. I got no complaints on that. That was fantastic. When you get the ball in his hands, he shows his speed, and it's really nice. He had a linebacker trying to cover him. That didn't work out, for the Chargers at least. He's got the speed. You get the ball in his hand, he could make a play. So we got to figure out, the Packers got to figure out a way to get the ball in his hands. I just don't think I don't think it's going to be this year that he's going to be making big impacts consistently. So don't look forward to that. Don't expect it. The big show.
I don't know. Look, and I wonder if it's not this year, is it any year? I really do. How long do you develop a guy?
Well, because he's a smaller school guy and he's a seventh round pick, I could see it taking into his third year to really get him going. I can see that, and that's okay. But I think the expectation on Jeff Janis has been so unrealistic from a fan standpoint. The Big Show talked about it today on WSSP in Milwaukee. They asked the question, if you have all your wide receivers coming back after the bye healthy, minus Jordy Nelson because he's not coming back, who are you taking off the field to put Jeff Janis on the field? Because you're not taking off James Jones. You're not going to take Randall Cobb off the field.
Nope.
You're not going to take Devontae Adams off the field. And you're not going to take Ty Montgomery off the field. It's not going to happen. It doesn't make any sense. Packer fans are just, they love the underdog. They want to see this small school kid succeed and do really well. But they're also hoping that the answer is on the roster to fix the deep threat. They are hoping and praying with everything they have. They're letting that get into their head, and they're saying a lot of dumb things. There was a fan that called into that show today and said, Jeff Janis is just so talented as an athlete, they should put him on defense to cover fast tight ends.
Absolutely.
What?
Yeah, I mean, that's a brilliant idea.
What? What is happening? What is happening? Packer fans, you are generally considered some of the smartest fans in the league. What happened? How did you all get so stupid collectively over one person so quickly? I don't get it. Jeff Janis hasn't done anything to prove that he deserves all this attention. Can we all just calm down? I'm the only one yelling. But I'm just saying, Jeff Janis gets way more attention than he deserves. Let's be a little patient. I would love to see Jeff Janis be something that is exciting to watch and someone you can depend on. I don't think he's there right now. I think the Packers need to give him until next season and see what happens then.
And while we're piling on, because this has become the anti-Jeff Janis hour, can we just talk about the man's Twitter account? All he does is tweet ads. He makes Clay Matthews look like a compelling tweeter, and it drives me insane. So I finally actually unfollowed him. It hurt my soul, but the man tweets pictures of stuffed avocado, for crying out loud.
Hey, he loves stuffed avocado. He loves to eat healthy. He can't help himself.
So that's my Twitter unfollow of the week, Jeff Janis.
Jeff Janis. Look, there are a lot of negative things that are said here about Jeff Janis. We've been doing it for 2 weeks now? 3 maybe?
You have been.
Okay, I have been. I want to make this clear. This is like the John Kuhn of the wide receiver group. I do not hate the man. I want him to succeed. I want people to shut up about Jeff Janis until he actually does something in the National Football League. He hasn't done anything yet. I don't know when it's going to happen. And if he hasn't done anything yet, it's not because Rodgers isn't utilizing him or coaching him up or helping him out. It's not because the coaches are being mean and they're just a bunch of big meanies that don't like him because they're jerks. He's not ready. And if he was ready, the guys that want to win, that run the football team, would use him to win football games. That would be their goal. They're not stupid. This is how they make lots of money. I don't understand why Packer fans think they know more than the guys who get paid lots of money. I don't get it. That's that.
Fair enough. Jeremy, of course, you're allowed to be wrong, and you've done that exact thing here today. I want to allude to, you mentioned the 2 plays that Janis had on Sunday. That first one, that play downfield.
Yep.
That, I believe, is called a 30-yard rub route, which Jeff Janis probably called on the fly himself, which Richard Rodgers may or may not have known about at the time. But Jeff Janis clearly well beyond our comprehension when it comes to football routes.
A 30-yard rub route. That's brand new.
30-yard rub route, yes. And you'll see it in the future, I'm sure. But I will pose this thought to you guys. You remember a few years ago when the Tennessee Titans were really awful? And I know that's like every year in the last 10 or 15 years, but the year that they started like 0-6 with Kerry Collins at quarterback, and everybody kind of agreed that he was not the problem. Like, everything else was going wrong, but Collins was actually doing okay. And they made the switch for Vince Young anyway, and everything changed. Might I just propose that maybe if Jeff Janis goes out there, maybe if Jeff Janis gets more playing time at wide receiver, that opens things up. He starts getting open with his 30-yard rub routes, whether there's another player down there to rub, or not. Whatever.
Stop.
I'll put it out there. Jeff Janis could very well be fix what ails the Packers receivers right now.
Jeff,
because you said who do you take off the field? I agree. You can't take Cobb off the field. You can't take James Jones off the field. I don't think it's such a simple argument for Davante Adams, and I like Davante Adams, but he and Rodgers have not been in sync.
Oh, come on.
Consistently. So I'm just putting it out there. As a Janis lover,
I'm gonna have a stroke. Oh God, it's so bad. Baba has joined the hordes of crazies.
I didn't join it.
I think the only guy I'm taking off the field to get Jeff Janis on the field is Richard Rodgers, and then you're running a 5 wide receiver threat. I don't like that. Okay, I don't like it. I want to see Richard Rodgers improve. He needs to stay on the field. Jeff Janis is a no. Thank you. Good night.
Revert Jeff Janis to tight end. It's fine.
Or a quarterback. Have we thought of that?
Yeah, we can move Jeff Janis to quarterback, tight end. He can play a little bit of offensive line. He can do anything. He can play linebacker, apparently, which is the dumbest thing I have ever heard said on radio.
No, you've had private conversations with Bobo. You've heard much dumber.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
you
true.
really have.
But those weren't on the radio, which is what I said at the end there, just to be really clear. Dumbest thing I've ever heard on the radio. Okay, that's not true. I've heard Skip Bayless on the radio. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Okay. There you go. Real quickly to kind of cap things here. Packers special teams, I don't know that you guys, any of us really have a whole lot to say about it, but looked pretty good to me. There's a certain Packer who also had a couple good plays on special teams. I won't say who.
No, you can. Jeff Janis has been fantastic on special teams. He has been great. I have enjoyed him on special teams. Yes, he's messed up a few times, but he's also made a couple plays. He almost blocked that punt this week. He's been pretty darn good on special teams, and he should hang his hat on that. That's fantastic. Good for you. Jarrett Bush did it for a lot of years, and he was proud of it. Jeff Janis, be proud. You're doing really well on special teams. You need to hold on to that and run with it.
So to speak.
Yeah.
All right. Chris, anything to add other than special teams are awesome?
Here's the thing. We haven't seen any cataclysmic special teams failures. And that's pretty much how I gauge whether or not special teams are successful. So I'm happy.
Yeah, and we're not talking about Tim Mastey anymore. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, overall, actually, it's been really positive, I think.
To everyone who's listening to the podcast, I apologize for all the yelling. Some people make me crazy. I'm sorry.
Yes. Certain beverages are not being consumed during this podcast that normally are, from what I understand. So
I'm drinking water. And
it's a bye week for our livers as well.
I guess. So apparently, in order to stay calm during the podcast, I need an alcoholic beverage. I don't know if that's the case, but if you keep talking about Jeff Janis as if he's the savior of this offense, I will continue to have heart attacks on the podcast.
It's a heart of the offense. It just said he's got to be out there. That's all. Anyway, it's time for I think this might be our only game this week because of the upcoming bye week. Pick 3. Where basically we pick 3 Chargers we would like to add to the Packers roster. I think I've got a little bit of an upset. We talked a little bit about our picks before the show. Well, I talked about my picks before the show. I don't know if you guys were listening. But Jeremy, I'll throw it to you first. Which 3 Chargers would you like to add to the Packers roster?
All right, short and sweet. I'm taking Keenan Allen for obvious reasons. I'm taking Ladarius Green. I know Antonio Gates is Antonio Gates, but he's 90 years old. And I like Ladarius Green. I think there's a lot of potential there. That's the guy I'm taking. And This one's a little harder, but because he had a good game, and I actually enjoyed watching him play, Jerry Atauchu, because also his name is fun to say, that will be my third.
All right, Chris.
I'm taking Keenan Allen, obvious reasons. I will take Antonio Gates, all 89 years of him, because I want to win this year, and I think he would make a big difference. And finally, I'm taking Danny Woodhead because I giggle every time I say Woodhead.
All right.
Fair enough.
First of all, Jeremy, I'm going to say this about Ladarius Green. I am shocked that you would pick him for pick 3.
Why?
Because that's a good pick, and I picked him too. I like Ladarius Green even going back to last year, just things I heard about him. I would love to have him at tight end. So he's one of my guys. Also, I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name either, but Jeremiah Adaochu,
We'll go
that
with
linebacker.
it. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, he is apparently a guy who's still kind of making a name for himself, and when he has really good games, he has really great games. My third pick is actually not going to be Keenan Allen, so I am going to deviate from you guys on that one. I went Danny Woodhead as my number 3 guy because adding a threat like that could help Aaron Rodgers out a ton. Just the stuff that guy can do out of the backfield is awesome. So as long as he doesn't get destroyed.
I just want to make things clear. You're taking who at linebacker?
Adaochu?
Atauchu, the guy that I picked.
Yeah, that guy.
You're just copying me.
I had it written down already, bro.
Well, I made my picks on the fly. What?
Well, there you go.
You also said yours after me, so you might have written it down after I said it. Just because you wrote it down doesn't mean you didn't copy me.
Sure. Well, you can go ahead with that.
I did.
On this note, I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of questions to answer that were definitely not asked by other people on Twitter. They just happen to have the same idea that I did, even though they wrote these questions down quite a while ago. These are all off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's go with that theory. We got a bunch of Twitter questions actually from you guys, and you can tweet at us at Titletown Sound. Is that correct, Jeremy?
Yes, at Titletown Sound.
All right, so you can literally tweet us while you're listening to this. So, mess of things coming in here. So let's look at Travis Raymond's tweet at TRVSRYMND. Yeah, I think that's Travis Raymond without the vowels. And he put the Y in because that goes both ways. He says, Rumor Mill is saying trade for a wide receiver. What position/person would you make a trade for or is not necessary? Chris, I'm going to throw to you first.
I would not trade for a wide receiver. The only thing I would ever consider is maybe if there was some sort of sweet tight end deal out there, but I just don't see it, first of all. I would not trade for a wide receiver because you're going to get health of your wide receivers with the exception of Jordy Nelson back, and you ain't going to find a Jordy Nelson out there in a trade deal. So you're going to get your quality receivers that have been working with Rodgers in this offense, for weeks and weeks and maybe years in some cases. You're going to get them back when they finally return. So I don't think trades in the NFL, first of all, just don't happen. But I don't think it makes sense, especially with wide receiver. You're talking about trading for a guard or a tackle. Maybe I think it's a little different. But a wide receiver, the rapport that you need with your quarterback, I would almost never believe that it makes sense. That's why look, I was against the James Jones pickup because I thought it wasn't going to work out. I thought it was going to stunt the growth of these receivers or that he wasn't going to have the same connection with Rodgers. I was a little bit wrong there, but I don't see it midseason at all.
Well, I hope James Jones stays forever now. If I was going to trade for a wide receiver, it would have to be somebody who's an established deep threat and also not 90 years old, and that would not come cheap. It wouldn't come cheap. The Packers are all about cheap, so it's not going to happen. But I agree with you. I would go for some sweet tight end deal, a young tight end, maybe unproven, a guy. It would end up being a guy that nobody has ever heard of. And maybe that's not great now, but by playoff time, a guy that can contribute to that group. The tight end group is really, really poor right now. Richard Rodgers has not played well. Justin Perillo has to come in to give him a break. And not that Perillo can't help this football team. I think Perillo's a nice little player. I'm just thinking, you want to add some depth to that group. They need some help. But who do you trade for? It's not Vernon Davis. Dude's so freaking old and slow now. That's not a guy I'm trading for, which was what everybody was talking about for a while. Yeah. Vernon Davis, not the answer. In a perfect world, I'm trading for Rob Gronkowski, but that's also not going to happen. So, I would go tight end if I was going to trade for anything. I don't have any specific names that I would like. I just think that's the route that I would go. And the Packers are going to go cheap as possible because that's what they do.
All right, next Twitter question comes from Mark at Dud6887 on Twitter. And he says, how about all this nonsense regarding Janis, the wide receiver core, and Aaron's struggle versus a pressure defense?
Well,
I think there's a question in there. So, Chris, I'll let you take that first.
Well, I think we talked about it a lot. So people are clamoring for Janis now because he had one semi-productive game. I guess that's what he's alluding to. I think we kind of addressed that. I don't think he's there yet, even though he did have a flash. It wasn't like, he wasn't running crisp routes and it wasn't much of an improvement upon the last problems that he's had, which is that he's not in the right place at the right time and he's just not mature enough as a player. So I don't see him as the answer to anything.
I think the nonsense he was referring to was Janis not being on the field.
No, I disagree.
Yeah.
Mark is pretty consistently a level-headed guy. I'm pretty sure he's on our side with this there, Bobo. Yeah,
there's a lot to be wrong too.
There's a lot of Jeff Janis shenanigans right now, and I think people need to calm down. We're not going to get him to calm down. It's not going to happen, but just, slow your roll on Jeff Janis. I don't hate him. You shouldn't either. You should believe that he could possibly help this offense, but it's not today, and we all need to be okay with that, because if he could help the offense, he would be helping the offense. He had 2 plays last week, and one of them he was out of position. Great. He had 2 plays. Fantastic. Let's blow the roof off on the Jeff Janis conversation. I'm going to stop talking about Jeff Janis now. Other than that, Aaron Rodgers, pressure defense, I feel like, it comes down to health of the wide receiver group. The pressure can be there, fine, but he needs 2 things. He needs his wide receivers to be getting open, but also he needs to stop looking deep. He's been doing it a lot. That would probably be the one thing that I would say when a defense is bringing pressure and Rodgers is looking deep, it's a problem. And he needs to work on that, yes. But I'm not really... It's hard to say you're concerned with much of what Rodgers does at all.
All right. A couple of questions from James Korsmu at JKSub20, guy we all know and love here. 2 questions from him. First one, I will ask you guys, will there be a pass play of more than 60 yards this year? I'm presuming he means, will the Packers have a passing play of more than 60 yards this year? Because if it's a league-wide question, I could almost guarantee yes. But, Chris, pass play over 60 yards this year from the Packers?
I sure hope so. It doesn't look like it at times just because of the struggles they've been having, but they will. This offense is going to be a lot more complete week 17 than it is now. So they'll develop something, and yeah, they'll get the deep game going. It's just not going to be as often as it was in the past because you don't have Jordy Nelson. You lose Jordy Nelson, you lose a lot of your deep threat. No matter who you are, you lose. If you're the Cowboys, you lose Des Bryant. You can't replace that, but they will. I mean, there will be at least one 60-yard passing play.
I want to say yes. I don't want to be too positive because it is a problem. They don't have a deep threat right now. Rodgers seems to think that Devontae Adams can be that guy. That's not anything that we've ever heard of before, other than when Rodgers said it. It's not anything we've seen before. So can he be that guy? Well, I don't know. Maybe. It would be nice. We might see a play that's 60 yards, and it might be to Jeff Janis. I don't think we're going to see a lot of them. I think we do eventually see one. Yes.
All right. His other question, and Jeremy, I'll let you take this one first. What do you think Spencer Havener is doing right now?
I think Spencer Havener is sitting in his house, photoshopping pictures of him wearing the number 53 and sending them out to everyone he knows. That's what I think he's doing.
So look, first of all, I think we agreed it's Havener. But second of all, I have a quest now at some point in the next several years, I need Spencer Havner as a guest on the Titletown Sound podcast. So, to all our dozens of listeners out there, please, if you know Spencer, have any idea how to get in touch with him, his Twitter account hasn't been updated in like 4 years. So, if you have a way to get in touch with him, let us know because we got to speak to this man.
Yes, and I am not to correct you, but I believe Mr. Havner would be the preferred nomenclature at this juncture. So, Mr. Havner, if you're listening, by all means, feel free to drop in on the podcast. A couple more Twitter questions real quick. Grant Pack Attack on Twitter asked which defensive player played the best last week. Jeremy, what do you think?
I'm going to cheat a little and go with the most simple answer possible. Demarius Randall, just because of the last play of the game. There you go.
Boom.
Yeah, the thing about last week is I felt like nobody really stood out. So maybe that's the correct answer because it was the only play that really stood out on the defense, and I really just can't think of anybody else that was. I mean, nobody stepped off the page. I don't, if you guys agree, but I guess that's a good enough answer.
I don't think anybody was downright terrible either.
No, I don't either. I thought the defense actually, shockingly, I think the defense played relatively well for giving up 500 yards, but I just don't think anybody was really flashy.
Yeah, I think the 500 yards was a group effort. It wasn't like one or two guys played absolutely terribly. The whole group at some point failed in the game. So to pick the best defensive player of the game, you kind of pick a standout play that turned the tide and say that's the guy.
I think it was Jeff Janis hurting the punter. Special teams, I know, technicality, whatever. One more Twitter question, and I'll throw it to Jeremy again. This from Angel at Rocketfish72 on Twitter. Let's try Clinton Dix at wide receiver. Just a thought.
I'm going to go with a really strong no. But, look, Clinton Dix is great. I'm not a fan of experimenting with moving guys around too much, especially during the season. I don't see that happening. Yeah, no.
I think we're just as likely to see Mike McCarthy at wide receiver as we are.
That would be an event.
I guess it'd be more like a tight end. I don't know that he's gonna,
Well, I'd pay money to see it.
I don't think he's gonna take the top off of defense anytime soon.
You never know. That mustache. If he grows that mustache back, he'll take the top off. All right, that'll happen. Mostly out of confusion and fear, but it would happen.
My question is, who do we release to put McCarthy on the roster?
Jeff Janis.
Jeff Janis,
the coach? Is that what we're going to do here?
Yes, Jeff Janis, the coach. You can't learn the playbook as a player. Why don't you teach it?
30-yard rub route, man. I'm telling you.
He's going to implement that on every play.
Heck yes, even the running plays.
All right, get 30 yards downfield. We're running a 30-yard rub route. That's going to happen.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, that's it for Twitter questions for this week. And, of course, the bye week is coming up, so we have no real reason to play Fantasy Pick'em. So you'll have to find out how we did this past week. Next week, hint, I won. And True False was actually kind of interesting because every single question that I asked ended up being false. But you'll find out what the overall records are from that next week as well. So you'll have to tune in next week. See, isn't that a nice teaser?
Teaser.
That'll get us at least 3 listeners next week. It's awesome.
That's gonna, yeah.
Yeah, the 3 listeners will be the 3 of us.
Yeah.
Really drawing in a crowd.
So, high future.
Jeff Janis just unsubscribed, in case you're wondering.
I think he did. He's tired of my yelling.
All right. We do want to, since it's the bye week, we're going to have the bye week awards here on Titletown Sound. And we've got this will be fairly quick, I think, but we've got a few categories we'd like to discuss here. And we'll start off with the top rookie of the season so far. And I actually have no idea who you guys are picking. So, Chris, I guess I'll throw it to you first. Your bye week award for top rookie goes to...
I think I would give it to Demarius Randall. I think that he has really, well, I think the most telling thing is you haven't heard his name that much. He's been a very effective corner. He's not. Sure, he's going to have rookie growing pains, but I think he's been very effective. And the loss of Tremont Williams and Devon House has been minimized or minimal because of the presence of the rookies in that defensive backfield.
Yeah, I think it's a clear-cut answer. I really want to give Ty Montgomery a shot at it, but Demarius Randall has seen the field an awful lot for being his rookie season, and he's been great. And Quentin Rollins also deserves honorable mention. When he's got on the field, he's made some plays, and so that's nice to see. But Demarius Randall, when you're not hearing a rookie's name, but you're seeing him on the field, he's doing something right. So Demarius Randall has to be the guy.
All right. Congratulations, Demarius Randall. That award is going to be in the mail soon, I'm sure.
It'll be a picture of Bobo.
Yeah, Jeremy said he was going to take care of it, so I'll trust him on that.
Yeah.
The next award is for Best Second-Year Player. A lot of guys who've developed very nicely over the last season and a half, almost. And so, Jeremy, I'm going to let you start this one. Who would you give the Best Second-Year Player award to?
There's actually a good handful of players to consider here.
There really are.
Clinton Dix has been great. Jaron Elliott has stood out quite well for being an undrafted guy. There's Corey Linsley is on that list. So I'm going to go with Corey Linsley. He's been so great at center. Starting last year, he was fantastic, but this year he's even better. And I would dare say that he has been the best offensive lineman on this team this season. Hate me if you want to, but that's what I believe. So Corey Linsley is the best second-year player on the team.
I don't know that I disagree with your evaluation of line play. I think he may have been the best, or at least the most consistent offensive lineman. But I will probably say that Clinton Dix would qualify for me. I think he's been really after the first week, where apparently he forgot how to tackle and was ducking his head every time he approached an offensive player. I think the most encouraging thing was that he's corrected that problem, and he's been really solid. And he's really shored up the back end of that defense, especially without Morgan Burnett for several weeks. I don't think that could be overlooked, so I would give him the second-year player award.
Yes. I think the Packers would look quite a bit different without either one of those individuals, but the correct answer, of course, is Jeff Janis for that award. Our next award is for the biggest disappointment, and Jeremy, I'm going to punch you in the face if you say the name that I'm thinking of, but it's your turn to talk, so biggest disappointment so far this season is
Jeff Janis. No, I'm totally kidding. It's not Jeff Janis. Richard Rodgers has been the most disappointing second-year player. I expected a big jump this year, and it's just not been there. And again, it might be because he's the only tight end on the roster up until last week. Maybe he needs a break, but I think Richard Rodgers has been heavily disappointing.
My answer is a little unorthodox, but I'll say my biggest disappointment is actually Nick Perry. The reason I said is because he's been playing so well, and then he gets injured again, and it's frustrating because every time the guy gets a head of steam going, he gets hurt.
Now I know it seems like Nick Perry is a second-year player because he's always hurt, but he's not a second-year player. We need to make that clear.
Oh, no. This is biggest disappointment.
Oh, dang it.
Second-year player.
Well, I'm stuck on the last question, so ignore me. I'm the idiot.
I stand by my statement that Nick Perry. No, so what I'm saying, he's a disappointment just because it seems like this is going to be a cycle that always will happen. And at this point, the Packers re-signing him seems like a long shot just because of his health. He's not staying healthy.
You're not wrong. Nick Perry has been a disappointment. Not when he's on the field, not when he's healthy, but the fact that he can't be on the field and he can't stay healthy.
Maybe the better category would be biggest frustration because every time that he's healthy, he actually starts to fly. He starts to look good. And he starts to say, okay, this is the player we thought he was. And then he's hurt again.
Right. So a little bit of that Justin Harrell feel there. Not so bad, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, not that bad.
I feel dirty all of a sudden.
I'm just here to ruin the podcast for you, Bobo. That's my goal.
Dude, I still remember sitting at Steak and Shake listening to the draft on the radio, and then they said his name, and I just sat there saying, "Ooh!" for 20 seconds.
Yep. I think that's everyone's reaction. That's how everyone felt.
That's why I'm not allowed in Steak and Shake anymore.
Well, that and urinating in the corner, that was a problem.
Well, I'm not supposed to talk about that. Anyway, last award for the bye week awards here on Titletown Sound. Biggest surprise. And Chris, I'll throw this one to you. The biggest surprise so far for you is
BJ Raji. I thought he was going to have an impact this year. I thought he was going to be a nice little depth addition to bring him back. I would never have thought he would be as effective as he is. He's back to 2010 BJ Raji, and the sooner he can get healthier, the better.
I want to agree with you and say BJ Raji. I'm going to go a little bit unorthodox myself here, and I'm going to go with Clay Matthews. I know Matthews was good last year at inside linebacker, and he's always good at outside linebacker. Well, I shouldn't say always. He's been on and off at points, but he's been a fantastic outside linebacker, and he looked really good at inside linebacker. But that guy is playing with his hair on fire at both positions this year, and it's almost unfair. It's, to me, pure insanity, and it's a huge surprise that he could play both positions so successfully. It's impressive. It really is.
I think that's a really fair answer. I think that's a good call. I'm surprised with how well he's playing as well. I don't think you're wrong there.
all right. Fair enough. That is pretty much it for the podcast this week. We don't have predictions to make, so
Nope, no predictions this week, but there are articles at the website that you should read. We have been doing our best to keep some content up. It is the bye week. It is awfully hard to keep stuff going, but we have some stuff. We have a wonderful recap of weeks 1 through 6, which you need to read it.
You really do. So James Korsmo is one of our new writers, and he gets it. He's got a great sense of humor. It's really a good piece. And we're going to have a lot more stuff like that coming up. I think we've added a couple writers who are really going to be able to do some good stuff. So check out what we've got on the website.
Also from James, we have Undefeated and It Feels So Good. You should read that as well. I know that there's a lot of things Packer fans have felt a little panicked about. This is a good article for you to read if you're feeling panicked. So go on over and read that as well, if you can read. And then we have another article from Josh Gentry up this week. Rodgers' latest is truly remarkable, talking about the record that Rodgers just broke. Go ahead and read that. Go to TitletownSoundoff.com. Those are 3 things for you to read, so you can entertain your brain at TitletownSoundoff.com. Also, later in the week, we have an article coming up from Cody. He wrote an article about free agents, the upcoming free agents, and what that means for the offseason. So we're going to have that up real soon. So pay attention for that. TitletownSoundoff.com. We still have content. Even though it's the bye week, we're not taking a break. There's still stuff for you to read. So, with that being said, thank you for listening to the show. Bobo.
yes.
Have anything to say?
Mr. Havener, if you come on the show, I will pet you instead of a cat.
Yeah, that got awkward.
I don't think he's coming on the show. And
Fine, I've on that. See if I care.
all right, thanks for listening.
I don't have a cat.
We do actually, I'm going to announce this now, and maybe I shouldn't. I'm a little early on it, but we do have another podcast that we're going to start posting here real soon. A couple other writers from the website are putting a podcast together. We've been throwing around their test podcasts and getting feedback and getting it ready to go. So we'll have even more podcast content for you guys to listen to because we're just that awesome. So stick around at TitletownSoundoff.com. We're staying busy. You got plenty to read. You got plenty to listen to. And there's going to be more coming. So, with that all being said, thank you for listening to Titletown Sound, the unfortunate Jeff Janis edition. We will bring you another podcast next week.
It's the first of many.
Are you looking for some signed Packer memorabilia?
Look no further than Waukesha Sports Card.
If a Green Bay Packer can sign it, Waukesha Sports Cards has it.
Check our website for upcoming Packer player and legend signings.
Go to WaukeshaSportsCards.com.
Eddie Lacy, Mike Daniels, Gilbert Brown, Don Barclay, Micah Hyde, your Green Bay Packers, yesterday's legends and today's superstars. From corporate or nonprofit events to private parties, add some spice. Hire a Packers player from Mayfield Sports Marketing. For details, just go to PackersTalk.com and click on Player Appearances.